Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Smart Outsourcing Talks. And today we have one of an elite guest, I would say, uh, uh, which doesn't need any introduction as such. Welcome Daniel Hood, editor in chief of Accounting Today. Welcome, Dan, to the show.
Thanks, Manoj. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let me first introduce you. So for the people on the podcast. So Dan is editor in chief of Accounting Today and Tax Pro Today. Since joining as a managing editor back in 1998 and stepping into the editor in chief roles in 2011, Daniel has shaped how over 300,000 accounting professionals perceive transformation, technology, talent, and purpose in the industry. Before becoming a guiding voice in the accounting media, Daniel sharpened his editorial instincts at some of the world's most respected newsrooms, including New York City Daily News, the Wall Street Journal, Europe, bringing a journalist eye for the insights to the complex world of finance. Beyond industry coverage, Daniel is also a novelist and the author of a guide to the New York City. So his storytelling isn't just about the news, it's about the narrative, it's about the character and the vision. He hosts the popular Accounting Today podcast and has facilitated coverage of the profession's most pressing trends from AI, talent retention challenges to provocative perspectives like vulnerability as a strength of the firm leaders, highlighting his belief that leadership is a much as about heart as a head. In recent note at 2024 Firm Growth Forum, Dan reminded us that growth isn't always about bigger numbers. It's also about building firms that reflect our values and lifestyles. And then I still remember that, you giving that keynote, and it was very, very valuable one. And I have been witnessing, I was there for all the firm growth forums. So, Dan, I'm honored to have you on this Smart Outsourcing Talks, and we are excited to go beyond the headlines today and explore how talent, technology, and transformation are shaping the next decade of accounting. So, welcome to the show and your first comments.
Thanks. Well, first off, thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure. We always seen you at the Firm Growth Forum. As you mentioned, you've been at all of them. You're a regular. We ought to have at some point. We're going to have an award for that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to have a chance to talk to you about this. I know you talk to a lot of accounting firms. You know a lot of what's going on out there in the field as well. So I think this should be a great conversation.
Yes, but then you write, you talk, you meet so many people, and you edit so many articles. So of course, I mean, you are miles ahead of what we can do.
Well, I don't have to be miles ahead. I just have to be a little bit ahead. That's the trick I've discovered, right? You don't have to be. I don't have to be looking out 10 years. As long as I'm a month ahead of everybody else, I'm in good shape. And it's
Yeah,
hard because things are changing, and you know this. Things are changing
yeah,
so incredibly quickly. It's
yeah,
really
very
hard
quick.
to get that far ahead of anything.
Yeah,
Just to be able
yeah,
to just keeping up is
mm,
good enough, but
mm,
then to
mm,
have a little bit of a viewpoint ahead.
yeah. So then, to start with, what are the most critical issues that a profession is facing today?
So this is one of those things, as we said, there's a lot going on, a lot of change going on in accounting, and a lot coming at a lot of different paces.
Hmm.
I'm going to pick maybe three or four, if that's all right, because I think there are a
Okay.
lot of
Yeah.
big topics. I would start with technology as a challenge and an opportunity. It's enormous in a bunch of different ways. The pace of change in technology is enormous. The role of technology within the accounting firm is shifting from a sort of supporting function, right? A way a tool that allows us to do our work, to becoming a sort of much more central strategic consideration for firms. They need to be making sure, it's critical that they're making sure they're using the right technology, that they're keeping up with technology, because whereas it used to be, it was the difference between having, a manual typewriter and an electric typewriter. That's great. The
Yeah.
electric typewriter is great. It's more, maybe a little bit faster and so on, but it's not going to materially change your ability to function as a successful accounting firm or business. Nowadays, technology really can make the difference between success and, I don't want to say failure, but success and a lack of growth that you of any kind of growth. So I think that's important for firms to think about. It. On the flip side, right? If you get it right, if you get technology right, if you embrace it, it'll turbocharge your firm. It'll take you into the future in a way that's going to be super gratifying, super successful, help you meet all your goals, whatever they may be. So I'd say, yeah, technology is the first one in both in terms of making sure you're keeping up with it, but also that you're taking advantage of the opportunities it offers you to get ahead. Second, I would say we can always talk about, and we're still talking about the pipeline issue, capacity issue. There is a lot of work out there for accounting firms to do, and there aren't a lot of accountants to do it. This is both an opportunity if you have the capacity to do the work, to take work from clients who aren't able to be served by the profession, but also it's a tremendous challenge to make sure you have the capacity to serve the clients you have. So that remains a tremendous issue, and then part of that is the reputation of the profession as a whole. That ties into sort of the role of AI in accounting, and I'm separating that slightly from the role of technology. Obviously, there's a lot of connections there, but I think AI is unique in its own way. It's a little early for us to really have to desperately figure out AI. I think firms need to
Right.
figure out technology as a whole. They need to
Right.
figure that out today.
Hmm.
AI, they have a little bit more time to figure out because it is still relatively new, but accounting firms are going to have to figure that out
Yeah.
in an important way. And again, it's similar. It is technology, right? So I'm not saying it's not part of the technology equation, but it brings its own challenges in that it's a sort of the potential for clients and new staff and so on to say, well, AI does all this. What's the role of the accountant? Right? Technology, whatever it may do, is not going to question the role of the accountant. Whereas I think AI is going to bring us to a point, not necessarily now, but in a few years, where we're questioning the role of all sorts of professional service providers, including up to and including journalists.
Yeah.
We're going to be questioning lawyers and
Hmm.
teachers and anybody who brings a sort of professional expertise to the services they're
Hmm.
offering, and say, well, why
Hmm.
is it that AI can't do all the things you're doing? We're all going to have to answer
Hmm.
that question.
Hmm.
Accountants as
Hmm.
much as anybody else.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, there are some other issues, but I think those are the top three that I would focus on.
Sure.
Unless you
Hmm.
add sort of a broader one
Hmm.
of change management, I think accounting firms
Sure.
need
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
strengthen their muscles around change
Right.
management. There is so much
Hmm.
change going on in so many different areas, at so many different levels of complexity, and so
Hmm.
many different levels of how much of a threat they are to a threat or an opportunity they are to the firm. Some are very small, some are very large. There's so
Hmm.
much coming at you that accounting
Hmm.
firms can't afford to not be
Hmm.
good at change.
Hmm.
They need to
Hmm.
figure out ways to become better at handling change, better at communicating
Hmm.
change, better at getting their
Hmm.
staff comfortable with change, all the
Hmm.
things that go around it. I think that's probably a
Hmm.
fourth big issue for firms to think
Hmm.
about. And once
Hmm.
you figure that out, once you
Hmm.
develop your change management muscle,
Hmm.
I think that's one of those things that's going to help with every other issue that comes at you. So it's one of those I think critical for firms to develop as soon as possible, a
Hmm.
capacity for
Hmm.
change.
Hmm. Hmm.
I
And
realize that was sort of a long-winded thing, but those are my four
yeah, no,
points.
but I think it brought out a valuable point. So you talked about technology, you talked about AI, you talked about the change management, that you're about to bring. So Dan, according to you, I mean, you have been speaking to a lot of people and stuff like that. So what is your definition of a successful accountant in today's age?
I would put it this way. I would say the successful accountant is one who has defined for themselves what a successful accountant is. And I think this is you're talking about what I was talking about the firm growth forum where I said
Hmm.
uh, uh, a successful firm is requires you to define it. It doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
about growth. It's about what you want from
Hmm.
your firm. But I think that's true
Hmm.
for both individual accountants and
Hmm.
individual accounting firms. Is that they
Hmm.
in a way they didn't have to for many
Hmm.
generations. Accountants are in a
Hmm.
position to
Hmm.
define what they want their careers to look like and to
Hmm.
define what they want their firms to look like.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because there's a lot more options for both of those things, right? You can have,
Hmm.
in a way, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, and even into
Hmm.
this century, there was
Hmm.
kind of, a very limited set of options for what you could be as an accountant and what you could be as an
Right.
accounting firm.
Hmm.
That's all gone. You can do
Hmm.
your firm can look anywhere you like, your career can look anywhere you like. You can try
Hmm.
15 different things in your firm, from working at a nonprofit to starting your own firm to working for a larger firm to working in
Hmm.
industry to working
Hmm.
for government to going back and doing all
Hmm.
those at different times in different ways.
Hmm.
Similarly with accounting firms, you can set the structure of your firm. You have more
Hmm.
options for that than you've ever had before. So I would say
Hmm.
the first step of being a successful firm,
Hmm.
right, is
Hmm.
deciding or being a successful accountant
Hmm.
is you have to define what you want. what success would look like for you, then you have to have a plan to achieve it, right? Because none of the things are just going to happen. It used to be that success in accounting firms was just kind of happened because we all know what an accounting firm is. We all know what you need to do to be successful. There's so many different ways to be successful that you have to pick yours and then pursue it with a plan. So that's how I started dodging around what a successful firm is, because I really think people are in a position to define success
themselves. Yeah.
themselves in accounting,
Mm.
which is great.
Yeah.
But it also requires the choice, right? Choosing is a little
Yeah.
bit of a burden.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
realize that's a little bit of a kind of a weasel answer to it, but I think it's I think it's
Yeah.
reasonable. There are so many options, which is a
Mm.
fantastic thing, but it does require you to sort of
Mm.
decide, well, what do I want from my career and from my firm? What do I
Mm.
what does success look like to me?
Mm.
And
Sure.
once you figure that out, then you get a
Mm.
plan and you pursue it.
Yeah. And then, coming to, there are a lot of reports regarding, there is a talent crunch. I mean, the 300,000 shortage of accountants, like 75% in next 10 years, CPAs are going to be baby boomers. And, so how this is going to pan out in terms of the talent crunch, and uh, what's your take on that?
Right. Well, I would say there are some hopeful signs of a little bit of a rebound in terms of students entering the accounting profession. It is
Mm.
very early days, and
Mm.
they are very
Mm.
weak signs, but
Mm.
there's
Mm.
some suggestion that things might have, the worst of that may have passed.
Mm.
And we've seen firms start to find new ways around that, right? Not
Mm.
hiring non-accountants,
Mm.
doing offshore or outsourcing their
Mm.
work. That's been a huge
Mm.
help
Mm.
in that area. People are
Mm.
automating more work. They're
Mm.
partnering for more work. So we've seen ways to sort of mitigate some of the worst of that. I think the worst of the
Mm.
talent crunch is maybe
Mm.
past us. That doesn't mean it's
Mm.
going to go away. I don't think it's going to ever going to go away, or certainly
Mm.
not for the next generation.
Mm.
But I think firms are better at handling it,
Mm.
better at managing and mitigating it, and all the things around it, right? So figuring out, getting rid of clients if you can't serve them
Mm.
because you don't have the people to serve them. Firms are getting better at that. So I would say that
Mm.
uh, the fundamental shortage is never going to go away. It may not be as
Mm.
acute as it's been in the
Mm.
past, and firms may have
Mm.
better ways of
Mm.
handling it. But
Mm.
I don't think that we're going to see. Certainly, I wouldn't say in the next 5 to 10 years we're not going to go back to a point where the accounting profession has plenty of staff and no
Mm.
concerns about it. It's always going to be a
Mm.
concern, certainly for the
Mm.
next 5 to 10 years.
Mm.
Even
Mm.
with all the work that people are doing to make the profession more attractive, it's just there's
Mm.
so many other options for the
Mm.
kind of people who might come into accounting. So I would say
Mm.
we
Mm.
should assume that there will always be staff shortages. We're just going to get
Mm.
better at handling them.
Mm. And what do you think? What are the strategies that this firm should adopt in terms of getting talent, in terms of whether it's a recruitment, whether it is going global, or whether it is a retention, right? Because anyway, this is going to be, resource are going to be a valuable commodity, because it's going to be a, I wouldn't say commodity, but I'm saying valuable resources, because it's going to be lesser and lesser.
Right. Yeah, I would say the one of the things they need to be doing is everything, right? They need to be
Mm.
thinking of all the different all the things you mentioned, and I'll go through them in a
Mm.
second. But
Mm.
all of those are valuable, and firms need to be prepared to look
Mm.
into all of those to solve their
Mm.
capacity issues, right? It used
Mm.
to be you would
Mm.
just hope, well, maybe if we could just find the people.
Mm.
Well, that's
Mm.
never going to be, that
Mm.
won't be a solution all the time,
Mm.
right? You're going to
Mm.
need to look at everything. So one, you're
Mm.
going to need to increase your salaries.
Mm.
Accounting across the
Mm.
board pays too
Mm.
little, particularly entry level people. You
Mm.
talked about working internationally, dealing with working with
Mm.
international resources, international
Mm.
partners. Every
Mm.
firm of any size needs to be doing that, needs to be
Mm.
exploring that, needs to be talking
Mm. Mm.
to partners or potential partners overseas,
Mm.
or looking at any aspect of that, because that is a
Mm.
huge potential to help accounting firms
Mm.
manage their capacity
Mm.
issues. But
Mm.
similarly, they need to be within the United States. Need to be looking beyond accountants. There's all kinds of
Mm.
work that accounting firms do that don't require someone
Mm.
with a CPA or with an accounting background to do. So they need to be
Mm.
looking at that. They need to be
Mm.
looking at automation,
Mm.
and finally, for a lot of things, that's going to involve AI, but it's also going to involve just a lot of regular
Mm.
technology, sort of run of the mill stuff.
Mm.
But the final thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is retention. Right, firms need to work at retention.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
a great point to bring up, because people don't tend to
Yeah.
think of retention as a
Mm.
solution to the capacity
Mm.
problem. They don't really think
Mm.
about it as much as they should.
Mm.
And that making sure that the people you get stick around
Mm. Mm.
is a huge thing, and a lot of firms can do a
Mm.
lot of. There's a lot of room for firms to do more to
mm,
keep people on board. So
sure.
all of those, I would say that's the short version
Mm,
is they need to
mm,
be looking at all of those. You
mm,
can't afford to rely on any
mm,
single one of those solutions
mm,
for your capacity problems.
So, do you see that the global teams is becoming a norm, as we go over in terms of accounting firms?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a norm yet. It's becoming one very
Mm,
quickly, though. I think you're seeing a
mm,
lot of
mm,
firms.
sure.
I think it's still for a lot of firms, though, for the profession as a whole, maybe it's a little bit in the pioneering stage.
Mm, mm,
In the sense of, there's a lot of firms that have had tremendous success.
mm,
Not necessarily all the firms around them have realized that, but I
mm,
think it's rapidly coming to the point where, yeah, where it's going to be. If it's not a norm now, it's going to be a norm in the
mm,
next couple of years, where people will
mm,
just naturally say, "Yeah, sure.
mm,
Where do you outsource? Where, what else? What
mm,
international partners do you work with?"
mm,
Because the
mm,
assumption will be that you do. I don't know that
yeah.
it's there yet, but I think it's
Mm.
very close.
Hmm. And you talked about that how non-accountant can come into the profession and kind of help to to an extent kind of create a capacity. So even the what do you think why people are going away from the accounting fraternity? I mean, so why do you think that the why people are not joining a profession? What are the real reasons?
Right. Well, I mean, this sounds crass, but money is a big one, right?
Hmm.
They looked at we've done an accounting salary survey for a couple of
Hmm.
years, and we've compared it with salaries,
Hmm.
from salaries in other areas from other surveys,
Hmm.
and last year it looked like roughly entry level salaries for sort of entry level staff and seniors were a good $10,000 off
Hmm.
what other people similar graduate level uh,
Okay.
professions were doing. So, if
Hmm.
you had a basic business degree, you were making
Hmm.
$10,000
Hmm.
more than someone who was going into entry
Hmm.
level into accounting. Similarly,
Hmm.
for if you're going into law was actually
Hmm.
much more. But if you're going into
Hmm.
tech, if you're going to a lot of
Hmm.
areas where accountants are good fits, right?
Hmm.
Accountants are being drawn away by technology, by finance, by banking,
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
all sorts of other areas by industry, uh,
Hmm.
because the entry level salaries are much higher. So I think
Hmm.
that's one thing. You have this
Okay.
tremendous
Hmm.
disparity in pay, and if
Hmm.
you're coming out of school with big student loan debt, that's an
Hmm.
issue. That's a concern.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
there are some others. The reputation of the profession is not the best, right? I
Hmm.
think most people assume there's some money in accounting, but they don't see it at the beginning, and what they see is a tremendous amount of work. Accountants love
Hmm.
to brag about how hard they work and how much in tax season I never see my family, and they wear it as a badge of honor. And to a
Yeah.
certain extent, it is. To a certain extent, it's not silly, but
Nowadays, I don't think anybody gets attracted by those badge of honor.
yeah, right. And but accountants are still talking about it. That's the thing, right? No one wants that. No one is saying, yes, I want a profession where I work too hard and never see my family. But accountants love
Hmm.
to talk about it. And, that makes some sense, right? You're proud
Hmm.
of the hard work you've done
Hmm.
and the sacrifices
Hmm.
you've made.
Hmm.
But you're driving people away from the profession. That people say, well, why would I go for a fifth year of school that costs me money? Go to a profession that's paying me less than other
Hmm.
professions.
Hmm.
That sounds like it's a lot harder work and that keeps me
Hmm.
away from my family. And where the reward is
Hmm.
30, 40 years down the line, right? The big money
Hmm.
is at
Hmm.
being partner and getting ready to retire. And
Hmm.
that's not what you're seeing when you start. So I think a
Hmm.
lot of things are driving, are
Hmm.
among the things that are driving people away.
Hmm.
There are some other factors that are outside the
Hmm.
control of the profession.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just the shape of the workforce is changing.
Hmm.
COVID played havoc on people's thoughts
Right.
about college and paying
Hmm.
for college,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
sort of thing.
Hmm.
Other areas are just super attractive, right? Technology remains
Hmm.
tremendously
Hmm.
attractive. Finance
Hmm.
is attractive
Hmm.
and exciting and offers all
Hmm.
kinds of benefits. And these are
Hmm.
areas that are natural fits, like I said, for a lot
Hmm.
of the skill sets that accountants that
Hmm.
accounting firms are looking for. So if you say, well, I
Sure.
have all those skill sets, why
Hmm.
wouldn't I go to this sexier,
Hmm. Hmm.
more remunerative
Hmm.
remunerative
Hmm.
profession? So
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
the good news is that accounting as a profession is starting to look at that, right? They're starting to look at
Hmm.
the salaries. They're starting to
Hmm.
look at their reputation. They're starting to deal
Hmm.
with all those issues.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of it's
Hmm.
self-inflicted damage, right? They've
Sure.
driven a lot of
Hmm.
people away.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. So, in your experience, what are the two or three things we can do to kind of change this perception, or maybe
Right.
reality
Well,
also, just not perception?
yeah, I would say to a certain extent, it is reality, right? Money. I don't want to keep harping on money because for a long time
Yeah.
accountants
Yeah.
didn't.
Hmm.
They just are, well, there's money in accounting. We know you can
Hmm.
make a lot of money
Hmm.
in accounting. They
Hmm.
didn't realize how much of it is at the back end, right? How much of it is
Hmm.
once you've been in the
Hmm.
profession for a while, you can make some money.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
we're seeing accounting firms getting better about paying entry level staff. I mentioned we do a salary survey. We've done it now in its first year. We discovered this $10,000 gap
Hmm.
between
Hmm.
entry level staff in
Hmm.
accounting and in other places. This year, that's
Hmm.
mostly closed.
Okay,
We've discovered that
that's good.
younger accountants
Hmm.
just in a year making a lot more money. I
Hmm.
don't think it's because of our survey or because of
Hmm.
our reporting, but
Hmm.
just in
Hmm.
general, people are aware of that. So that's one thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Make sure your
Hmm.
salaries are competitive, not with other
Hmm.
accounting firms, but with
Hmm.
the people you're competing for, which is really technology and
Hmm.
banking and
Hmm.
finance.
Hmm.
Stop telling war stories. I mean, this is the one thing every accountant can do right
Hmm.
now to improve the profession is stop telling war stories. Stop telling people outside of accounting how
Hmm.
hard you worked in tax season. It's not attracting anybody. No one wants to hear it anyway. But it's really it's driving people away, and we need to start talking about why accounting's great. Why you're helping people, you're helping them grow their business and provide for their families and provide for the long
Hmm.
term security of their families and just achieving all their goals and all the different ways
Hmm.
you're helping people and your community and so on.
Hmm.
Um, we
Hmm.
need to start pushing that message. Accounts play a tremendous role.
Yeah.
Public accounts in particular play a
Hmm.
tremendous role in building the financial security
Hmm.
of the entire economy and
Hmm.
of their communities, and
Hmm.
that's an exciting and attractive thing to be a part of. Accountants
Hmm.
need to push that more and need to be
Hmm.
willing to be out there selling that message of the
Yeah.
the sort of public service role of the accounting profession, the public accounting profession. I think those are two or three things that would
Yeah.
be a big help broadly and at the firm level.
Hmm. So, like a big beautiful bill, we need a big beautiful profession charter, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Exactly. Here is what you should talk about, and here's what you shouldn't. Yes, we want one big beautiful accounting profession,
Yeah.
and uh, we'll turn it all around in a very short period of time. I don't think we'll be
Yeah.
able to get it
Yeah.
quite as
Hmm.
quickly as Congress turned around one big beautiful bill, but
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
our best.
Hmm. And then, with the new technology that is coming every day, changing the game, right? I mean, um, what do you think? Um, how the firm today operating will shift? As the technology makes more inroads into the profession, how the role of
I think
accountant is going to change? You know.
Right. I think, well, there's a couple of different aspects to it, right? There's how will the role of the accountant within the accounting firm or the
Hmm.
accounting department, how will that change? I think
Hmm.
we're going to find accountants interacting with technology much more. Agentic AI is
Hmm.
obviously going to be a big part of that. Accountants
Right.
are going to be,
Hmm. Hmm.
someone made the point, this is, for
Hmm.
managers in accounting,
Hmm.
this is probably the last couple of years where they'll be
Hmm.
managing just people.
Hmm.
What's going to you're going to find as you go forward is you're going to be managing people and agents, right? A
And
lot of the work
hmm.
that's currently done
Hmm.
by lower level people below you is
Hmm.
going to be done
Hmm.
by agents that
Hmm.
you have to
Hmm.
assemble and task and delegate
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
to. I think we're
Hmm.
going to see accountants doing a lot more of that, which is going to mean we're probably going to have fewer entry
Hmm.
level accountants
Hmm.
and more mid level accountants managing fewer entry level accountants, but a lot more
Hmm.
agents and a lot more
Hmm.
technology. So I think
Hmm.
internally we're going to see
Hmm.
the profession shifting that way, in that
Hmm.
a lot of your work is going to be around managing your technology,
Hmm.
managing the technology that does a lot of the sort of basic grunt work of what
Hmm.
you do.
Hmm.
And so there'll be a lot more of a focus on higher level thinking and advisory work to clients. From the
Hmm.
outside perspective, I think that
Hmm.
accounting firms are going to need to do some work to make it clear that, yeah, there's
Hmm.
all this technology that does all this work, but you need
Hmm.
somebody who can manage it as intelligently and as with as much of an eye towards the value for you as we are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Computers and AI, as great as they're going to be, are never the
Hmm.
same as
Hmm.
a skilled and talented accountant or CPA
Hmm. Hmm.
looking after your affairs and paying attention to you, knowing what you want and what you need,
Hmm.
and giving you the
Hmm.
advice that's perfect for you. So I think
Hmm.
there's a little bit of that, actually more than a
Hmm.
little bit.
Hmm.
That's going to be a public relations
Hmm.
issue for accounting firms and in their interactions with clients to make sure that clients understand that yes, we use a lot of technology. It's the best technology.
Hmm.
We know how to use it. It's as advanced as it could possibly be, but it's also filtered through our experience, our
Hmm.
knowledge, our deep expertise in all the areas that
Hmm.
matter to you, and our
Hmm.
deep expertise in you as
Hmm.
a client. Right? We know everything there is to know about you in a way that an AI
Hmm.
agent never could. And so we're able to manage this technology
mm,
on your behalf. So I think
mm,
that's going to be a message that accounting firms going to need to be good at telling,
mm,
good at getting out to their clients, because otherwise
mm,
clients are going to look and say, well, ChatGPT does my taxes pretty well. What do I need you for?
mm, mm,
So I think those are the two big ways I see that
mm,
element changing what accounting
mm.
firms look like. There's probably a million
Yeah,
others, but
yeah.
I think those are two
Mm,
big ones.
mm. And do you think that are you happy with the tech adoption in the accounting firms as they are right now?
Well, happy is such a relative word, but
No, I mean, you mean,
yeah,
when you look
I
at the
think
other industry and, when you look at accounting firms and accounting as a profession. So, what's your take on that?
yeah, short versions. I'd say a lot of firms need to up their game in terms of technology.
Mm,
I think there are obviously
mm,
firms out there doing fantastic work with technology.
mm,
Right, it's a big
mm,
profession. There's 44,000
mm,
firms. Maybe
mm,
10% of those firms are fantastic with technology. They're way out ahead. They
mm,
love it. They're
mm,
careful about it. Right, we do a
mm,
best firms for technology list every year, and one of the things they
mm,
always all of them
mm,
agree on is that they are not out
mm,
there on the cutting edge, chasing the shiny objects. They are not interested in
mm,
technology because they love technology. They're interested in
mm,
technology because it does great
mm,
things for their firm. So they're
mm,
they're thinking about it strategically and intelligently. And then there's 20% who are just behind them. They're
mm,
ready to adopt. They're eager to adopt
mm,
technology, but it may not be the
mm,
uh, core thing for them. And then I think the other whatever percentage I've left, I can't remember if it's 80 or 70%. But
mm,
anyways, majority of firms are probably need to step up their game in terms of how they adopt
mm,
technology and how they think about it. And they're
mm,
at this, I think we're at a little bit of a turning point, and it will be a 5 to 10 year turning point where
mm,
technology and accounting moves from technology that just replicates what you did
mm,
before in the
mm,
paper world, right? It
mm,
just says, oh,
mm,
well, it's a tax return. It's just instead of doing tax return
mm,
on paper, I do it on
mm,
a computer.
mm,
That's been most of technology and the implementation of technology in accounting for the past 40 years. I think we're at
mm,
a point where it's shifting from that to things
mm,
where technology changes what accountants do and how they do it. And as
mm,
that change becomes more important, as it becomes less
mm,
about, hey, we're digitizing a tax return and more about we're creating an
mm,
entirely new service line or an entirely new
mm,
way of doing
mm,
an old form of service. The audit. The audit is going to be completely
mm,
reimagined in the face of a lot of
mm,
the technologies we see
mm,
coming out there. The
mm,
AICPA is already out there with
mm,
their dynamic audit solution. I think we're going to see that kind of change happen in all the areas of accounting
mm,
where processes get reimagined, and firms need to be ready to adapt to that. So I don't think
mm,
they're necessarily ready for it. I think a lot of
mm,
firms are grudgingly accept technology
mm,
because they have to. And I think
mm,
they need to be a little bit more enthusiastic. I'm not, like I say, not
mm,
expecting them all to be super
mm,
excited, but
mm.
they need to grapple with it, I think, a lot more than they used to.
Hmm. And do you think that generally technology is the business enabler? Do you think that it will go ahead and create new models? So, like after COVID, a lot of people would say, "Hey, I am a remote first firm." So, would there be a chance that people now say, "Hey, I am a tech first firm"?
Well, I'm saying who's it was I want to say it was RSM. I think it was RSM.
Uh,
They're relatively recently installed in the last year or so. So came from their tech practice, and we were talking to him, and he said, we are not anymore. We are not anymore an accounting firm or a
mm,
tax and accounting firm
uh,
that uses technology. He said we're a technology firm that offers technology or offers accounting and tax services. And he was a little
that's
bit
good.
tongue in cheek.
Mm,
Cheap,
mm,
but his point
mm,
was sort of, all businesses, this is true,
mm.
all businesses are now technology businesses that
Yeah,
happen to do whatever they do. And I
yeah.
think that, yeah, firms definitely need to be thinking of themselves.
Mm,
If they're
mm,
not necessarily saying, hey, we're a tech firm that does,
mm, mm,
accounting and tax
mm,
services, they need to start thinking a little bit more in that direction, right? They need to
mm,
be
mm,
elevating technology
mm,
in their strategic thinking. So I think you're right about that. I think,
mm,
it's maybe
mm.
not quite that far, but they need to move much closer to that
Yeah.
than to where
Mm,
they are now.
mm, mm. And a lot of times, off late, I mean, we have been receiving, okay, somebody would write to us, hey, look, we wanted to start offshoring, but I think I got this technology, so let me first try and do that. And then after a few months, they will come and say, hey, look, I think the total technology is not working, so we'll start with offshoring. So I'm not sure today people are quite confused between offshoring and tech adoption, or maybe talent and tech, how to kind of work hand in hand along with that. So what are your views on that? So either it is only people, or it is only
Right.
technology, or it is kind of an integration of both.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I mean, right. The answer to the person who said, "I'm going to go try this tech thing, and then maybe I'll come back to you," should have been, "Why aren't you doing both?" Right. I mean, there. I mean, to be clear, right? There's a technology element to offshoring and
Hmm.
outsourcing of
Yeah.
any kind, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
connection is not. I'm not. I don't think it's difficult. I think it's pretty
Hmm.
well established how to manage, and it's not risky or anything like that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it is a level of technology that firms aren't necessarily,
Hmm.
up to yet. But the notion that you would split it and say, "Well, I'm going to try this tech thing in the hopes that it works alone."
Huh.
And not try. You should be doing both. They should be doing
Yeah.
both at the same time, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
is such a huge capacity issue. There's so much opportunity for accountants to do
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
more and more work and more things for their clients that
Hmm.
you should be
Hmm.
bringing all those things to bear so you can serve people as much as well as possible. So yeah,
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
should be doing both. They should be
Yeah.
outsourcing
Yeah.
and offshoring and using technology
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, three or four other things all at once and
Yeah.
raising salaries
Hmm.
and et cetera.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's funny
Hmm.
because I think you're right. I
Yeah.
think it makes sense that firms are thinking about it that way. They're thinking of what's the solution, what's the one solution to my
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
When what they
Yeah.
should be
Very well
realizing
said.
is that
Hmm.
yeah, there
Hmm.
is no one solution. It used to be there was. It used to be you
Hmm.
hired someone and that was your
Hmm.
solution.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's just not enough people to hire, and that will
Hmm.
not be at least
Hmm.
for the next 10 years. So you
Hmm.
have to be
Hmm.
trying everything. You have to be trying
Hmm.
offshore. You have to be trying
Yeah. Yeah.
technology. You have to
Today,
be looking at.
yeah, and today what happens, every week there is a new software, new AI tool coming in. So how do you keep up a pace with that? Because so whether to
Yeah,
people who wants to kind of running a small firm, and they want to scale up, and there is an talent crunch, and there's tech piece which is coming every week,
yeah,
and then they are like overwhelmed with everything. So what's
yeah.
your advice on how they should be taking this?
I have no idea how accounting firms can keep up with all the technology coming on. We have a guy on our team, our technology editor, who's totally dedicated to covering new technology, and he can barely keep up, and that's all he does. He doesn't have to do any. He doesn't have to do any work in an accounting firm. But yeah, no, it's difficult. It's really difficult, and I think one of the things for accounting firms that want to keep up and want to know what's going on in technology is to be
Hmm.
finding answers in as many places as possible.
Hmm.
Right? It's in podcasts like this. It's in there's all kinds of webinars. There's all kinds of sources. Accounting Today. I got to plug myself. I
Hmm.
got to say, Accounting Today
Hmm.
does a good
Hmm.
job. Our
Hmm.
technology
Hmm.
auditor, Chris Caetano, does a great
Hmm.
job of sort of trying to keep up with what's going on in the
Hmm.
profession. But there's a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I would say being open to all kinds of avenues of information. Right, talking to clients, talking to younger people on your staff who are often maybe a little bit more tech savvy or a little bit more tied in.
Hmm.
It's not true that
Hmm.
all young people are tech geniuses,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
there are a lot of them out there. They're more tied into it. So I say being open to information about technology from a bunch of different sources
Hmm.
and making it something of a priority to keep up with those things,
Hmm.
on a regular basis. Sort of setting aside
Hmm.
I don't know how much time it needs to be depending on your practice
Hmm.
areas and the kind of
Hmm.
clients you have,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. Obviously, if you work in a high tech client
Hmm.
base, you need to be much more up to date on your technology than if you're working
Hmm.
with a much more low tech
Hmm.
client base. But either way, you need to be setting aside some time, whether it's an hour a month
Sure.
or an hour a week or whatever,
Hmm.
to be saying, "Hey, are we on top of things?" To be trolling
Right.
your sources, saying, "Hey, anything new on the
Hmm.
horizon that we should be thinking about?"
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of accounting firms, particularly in industry concentrations,
Hmm.
they'll often hear about new things from their clients, right? Their client will say,
Right.
"Hey, somebody I know is
Hmm.
using this. Could we use
Hmm.
this? Could we implement
Hmm.
that?" And the accountant goes, "I
Hmm.
don't know. Let me check it out." And they check it out and they vet it,
Hmm.
and that's great.
Hmm.
But to a certain extent, I think going forward, it's going to be better for the accounting firm. It's going to be better
Hmm.
for their reputation and better for their position and better for them and their clients if they're
Hmm.
the ones bringing the
Hmm.
solutions to their clients. Right? If
Sure.
they're the ones who say, "We hear about
Hmm.
this. Do you want
Hmm.
to try it?" Or some of your
Hmm.
competitors are using
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
what would you think of implementing this? So
Right.
setting aside that regular time to
Hmm.
keep an eye on the landscape of new technologies,
Hmm.
to be ahead of it, I think is pretty crucial.
Yeah, very valid point. Keeping aside the time, right? Because then it becomes a rhythm, and then we kind of exploring new technology. So, Dan, coming to the transformation of the phones. Okay, so I mean today, business is growing faster, technology is seeping in, a lot of changes that is happening. So what do you think, what our firm needs to reinvent their business model in terms of serving their customers?
Right. There are a lot of, I think the business model of accounting firms has been the same for a long time, and I think that firms are reluctant to change that. But I think they need to be thinking about that change in part because I think what clients are wanting from accounting firms is changing. So
Hmm.
there's all kinds of elements of your firm model that you can look at changing, from pricing to
Hmm.
moving to more of a subscription based or a value added model. Those are two connected but slightly different things. Right? Not slightly, they're
Hmm.
actually fairly different. They have a lot of overlap, but
Hmm.
they're different things to think about. I think firms need to be thinking about how they're
Hmm.
offering services. I think the CAS model of a bundle of services where you have
Hmm.
tiered pricing for different types of elements of the different bundles,
Hmm.
and that it's based on a subscription thing where you have a regular recurring
Hmm.
relationship with the client that isn't once a year for taxes. It's once a week,
Hmm.
once a month, whatever the case may be, but frequent interaction with clients. I
Hmm.
think that's a model that firms are going to need to be looking at.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's going to become more widespread. We're going to see more firms moving towards a subscription-based bundled model.
Hmm.
For a bunch of different reasons. The revenue's recurring, it's great, it's comfortable.
Hmm.
You're comfortable with what you're offering. You're not constantly having to say, to justify your value or to write down work or to write off work.
Hmm.
I think firms are going to need to look at a different in terms of structure. And
Hmm.
this is all sort of, a lot of that's being driven um, by the entrance of private equity into the profession. That's
Hmm.
causing all kinds of
Yeah.
changes to firm structure and to
Yeah.
business model.
Hmm.
There's uh, I think probably the best thing that firms can do, as I said earlier, just go back and figure out what kind of firm you want to be, what
Hmm.
kind of services you want to offer clients, how you want to offer
Hmm.
them, how you think of yourself in the long term. Do you
Hmm.
see? Are you interested
Hmm.
in building a firm that lasts for 2 or 3 generations? Or are you interested in
Hmm.
building a firm that's strong for your lifetime, but then afterwards
Hmm.
maybe you pass it on to, you're happy to
Hmm.
sell it to a larger
Hmm.
entity, that kind of thing. I think there's so many more firm models out there that, again,
Hmm.
the question is, you got to be proactive about deciding what kind of one you want, and then about pursuing
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the model,
Hmm.
and a lot of firms trying different. We're already seeing that. A lot of
Yeah.
firms trying alternative practice structures, trying ESOPs,
Hmm.
or partnering with
Hmm.
wealth management firms, and so on.
Hmm.
So we're going to see a lot of changes in a lot of different structures out there. There may come a
Hmm.
shakeout
Hmm.
as some of them prove better than others, or
Hmm.
some of them
Hmm.
solve problems better than others. But I
Hmm.
think we're just going to see a lot more different firm models,
Hmm.
and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and even the M&A is just hotting up in the industry, right? You see, a lot of mergers, acquisitions, and stuff like that. So, what do you think where we are going in terms of M&A?
More and more and more, as you say, it's hotting up. I would say it's been pretty hot, astonishingly, for
Hmm.
15 years or so, 15, maybe even 20 years. It has
Hmm.
the market for M&A. What's happened recently, right, is that it's been turbocharged by private equity. So suddenly you
Hmm.
have all these firms that might have done
Yeah.
2 deals a
Hmm.
year are doing
Hmm.
6 deals a year, and
Hmm.
firms that used to do one deal every 2 years are now doing 3-year deals in 2 years.
Hmm.
So there's a lot more money out there. The costs, the prices
Hmm.
that are being charged for firms is changing. I think we're going to see a lot more acquisitions, but I think I'm not sure how long that will last.
Hmm.
We'll have to see. That's the real question: is at what point
Hmm.
do all the size of firms that make sense to acquire,
Hmm.
they sort of get all eaten up, and there's nobody left to acquire, because there's really, I think we mentioned there's around 44,000 accounting firms. Some people say
Hmm.
45, some people say
Hmm.
43. It's changing
Hmm.
as more and more get acquired. Right, that number is
Hmm.
dropping every day.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
most of those firms are relatively small. They're under $1 million. The overwhelming
Yeah.
majority of them are under
Yeah.
a million, and
Hmm.
then even
Hmm.
another big chunk of them are under $5 million. So you reach a
Hmm.
point at which you're too small really to be acquired.
Hmm.
And so the question is, do we find ourselves at a point in the future where
Hmm.
there's no more firms left to acquire, or no more large firms to acquire?
So,
We'll have to reach a point where there's no firms to
what is
acquire.
the sweet spot? When M&A, I mean, when the private equity fund looks at acquiring firm, is there any sweet spot? Do you see any trend?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's happening is the sweet spot's moving
Hmm.
down. It had been, say 2022, private equity firms were like, nah, the only firms we're interested in are top 100
Ah.
firms, which would have been,
Hmm.
roughly 50 million and
Hmm.
above. aren't interested in anything
mm,
smaller than that. A couple of years later, when a lot of those firms got bought out, they were like, well, maybe we can look at like 20
mm,
million and above. We're going to
mm,
do that. And then maybe we can look at 10 million
mm,
above. Now we're seeing private equity firms looking at 5 million and above. And even in some cases as low as 1
mm,
million if it's a special
mm.
firm. I think, if it's a
Yeah,
firm that brings a particular,
it's
a
expertise.
boutique
Yeah.
expertise or
Mm,
something like
mm,
that. But I think, there's a lot more private equity
mm,
firms that are interested in coming into
mm,
accounting, and there's still a lot more
mm,
firms that could be
mm,
acquired. I think we are, I don't know where the sweet spot
mm,
stops, where they start saying, "Now this is just too small." But I think they're going to reach it fairly soon. I mean, I think somewhere between 800,000 and a million has to be a
mm,
point below
mm,
which the integration
mm.
costs
Yeah.
and the deal
Doesn't.
costs sort of make
Yeah. Yeah.
and what kind of skills are you actually
Yeah.
getting? What value are you
Mm,
getting from bringing
mm,
in a firm like that? What you may find is that, and this is just a thought, you may find that people spring up who are experts at
mm,
bringing together firms that are 800,000 to
mm.
$1 million and turning them into a proper, a
Yeah.
proper firm that can then
Yeah.
be acquired by somebody bigger. So that may be the
Yeah.
next
So
step. Maybe that's what
maybe it's
happens.
just a more like a talent acquisition and a particular niche. They bring in expertise. They bring in, right?
Yeah.
So how many firms would
Yeah.
be there over
And
10 million?
how many firms will be over
Yeah.
10 million? That's a good question. I want to say probably, yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I'm trying to think of the numbers. I want to say, I think over 5 million, you could safely say somewhere between 600 and
Hmm.
1,000. If you say over 10 million, I think it gets maybe 400 to
Hmm.
500
So all the M&A is going to
firms in
happen
that.
between them.
But again, that's changing. It's
Yeah.
dropping all the
Yeah.
time, right? Yeah, there's roughly 1,000
Uh,
firms in that
hmm.
area, and then if you open it up to 5 million to
Hmm.
1 million, you probably add a couple of thousand
Hmm.
more.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but the question is, right, is as you
Hmm.
said, at that in all the firms below
Hmm.
that, do you suddenly find people who are uh, pulling
Yeah.
together, building five
Hmm.
million dollar firms out of a bunch of smaller firms, and treating them, maybe as you
Hmm.
say, sort of as a talent acquisition rather than a
Hmm.
merger.
Hmm.
That'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
And
But yeah, there's not a ton of firms
hmm.
available to acquire.
Hmm. And do you see a lot of non-financial entrepreneurs getting into this mergers acquisition firm? In fact, I met somebody at an last when I was in scaling. We are having a exhibitor, so we have a booth. So somebody walked in and say, "Hey, look, I'm a technology entrepreneur and I'm looking to acquire firms." and then and then
I
start offshoring. So
Yeah.
you kind of manage it, and I will kind of front end, and I bring that expertise of how to acquire and scale it up faster and stuff like that. So it was very interesting. I mean, and this was not just one. I had 2 3 such conversations. So uh, yeah.
Right. I 100% think you're going to find more people interested in buying accounting firms
Hmm.
right now. It's
uh,
primarily private
hmm.
equity, but I think we're going to find a lot more people coming in saying, "Hey, well, accounting firms are
Hmm.
a cool
Hmm.
conduit, and they bring a lot of interesting
Hmm.
stuff. They're a cool conduit to
Hmm.
reach small businesses. They're a cool
Hmm.
conduit to reach any kind of
Hmm.
businesses um, that you want to reach." So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot
Hmm.
more um, people coming in to looking to acquire firms. I think a lot of them will do it through the method of acquiring firms on a
Hmm.
turn, like when a private equity firm that's come
Hmm.
in acquired a
Hmm.
bunch of accounting firms or one accounting
Hmm.
firm. When they look to sell their
Hmm.
stake, I think you will see a broader range of other players come in and say, "Hey, yeah, I'd buy a stake in an accounting
Hmm.
firm." Whether they buy ownership, full ownership, I don't
Hmm.
know. Some of it will depend on what they
Sure.
want. And they may come with conditions. They may say, and this is, we talk to a lot of. I was going to give a specific
Hmm.
example, but I
Hmm.
don't. They're not doing this,
Hmm.
so I don't want to
Hmm.
say the name of it. But imagine there are all kinds of
Hmm.
vendors, software vendors out
Hmm.
there that have um, uh, accountants
Hmm.
channels, right? That use accountants to
Hmm.
reach businesses. So you can easily imagine all
Hmm.
kinds of software vendors or service providers to businesses. That's I was going to give an example of one that isn't doing it, but so I realized I shouldn't name a
Hmm.
name as an example because they're not
Hmm.
doing it. But if you can imagine all kinds of providers, payroll providers, and all kinds of investment advice
Hmm.
providers, and so on, who might say, "Hey, it would be great to own an accounting firm or part of an accounting firm if I can make sure that they'll allow me to get
Hmm.
access to their
Hmm.
customers, their
Hmm.
clients. I don't need to own it
Hmm.
necessarily whole,
Hmm.
100%, but that might be
Sure.
me." So you can see a lot of people would
Hmm.
be interested in that.
Hmm.
You can also see a lot of people just interested in owning
Hmm.
an accounting firm because they produce revenue on a regular
Right.
basis, right? They're
Hmm.
pretty steady.
Hmm.
Uh, and pretty decent revenue, but just as
Hmm.
important, it's pretty steady.
Hmm.
So I think we'll see a lot more
Yeah.
people coming in to buy accounting firms for a lot of
Yeah,
different reasons.
and if you even look at the landscape, as you said that there'll be a lot of firms below 5 million, right? I mean, tons and tons of firms, right?
Yeah.
So, what is your advice to that? So whether they should create a generalist firm or they create a niche.
I think in general, niche is a better long-term play and a better growth and value
Hmm.
play. If you're thinking at some point you might need to
Hmm.
sell, you will absolutely be better
Hmm.
off as a
Hmm.
niche player, right? If you have niche
Hmm.
expertise, it seems it's a little counterintuitive because it seems like you're limiting
Hmm.
yourself, but really what you're doing is you're deepening your expertise, which deepens your
Hmm.
value to someone. So you may
Sure.
have a narrower
Hmm.
pool of people who want to
Hmm.
acquire you, but they're going to be much, 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 much more interested
Sure.
in acquiring you. Right? Their interest level grows
Hmm.
um, with your level of
Hmm.
expertise. On the other hand, if you're looking at just to build what some people call a lifestyle firm, right, a firm that gives
Hmm.
you a comfortable
Hmm.
living, or maybe a more than comfortable living, but not a crazy
Hmm.
comfortable living, um, and some people describe it as the difference between wanting to
I like that crazy comfortable living.
have crazy comfortable. So I heard somebody describe it once as the difference between wanting to have a second home
Okay.
and wanting to have a third home, right? So if you want to have a second home, you can run just a regular accounting firm and make plenty of money and buy a vacation home, and that's great. If you want to have a third home, you want to have a home at the beach and a home in the mountains, and a ski thing, then you need to go
Uh,
crazy. But if you just want a comfortable lifestyle firm, probably a generalist firm is fine.
hmm. Sure.
For I think for the time
Sure.
being, you can build a very
Hmm.
comfortable living, serve clients very
Yeah.
well. There's
Hmm.
always um, and just you won't have, like we said, you won't have that crazy level of income,
Hmm.
but you can be very comfortable
Hmm.
and stay as a generalist and kind
Hmm.
of dive into whatever's interesting. And
Hmm.
then the real trick
Hmm.
there is to make sure that you are connecting
Hmm.
with firms that do
Hmm.
offer super niche
Hmm.
services, right? So that you can say to a client, if they have a specific need for a service
Hmm.
that you don't offer because you're a generalist, you need to be able to find that firm and have a relationship with those specialist
Hmm.
firms so that you can bring them in and say,
Hmm.
listen, my client needs to do this. I don't do
Hmm.
it. Can you do it
Sure.
for them? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
going to be a
Yeah.
neat thing.
Hmm.
The more specialist firms there
Hmm.
are out there, the more ability there is for
Hmm.
generalist firms to work
Hmm.
with them.
Sure. Hmm.
Um, uh,
Right.
so it's going to be interesting. I would say at that point, like
Sure.
it really
Yeah.
depends what you want to do. If
Yeah.
you want to grow fast and develop
Hmm.
value that you can
Hmm.
sell or trade
Hmm.
on, niche firms are probably the
Sure.
best way to
Hmm.
go. If you're looking for more of a
Hmm.
lifestyle
Hmm.
play, um,
Hmm.
then yeah, stay a generalist.
Sure.
Um,
Hmm. Okay. So Dan, that brings us to a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you four questions, and your answers needs to
all
be
right,
very brief, maybe just one sentence, but
I'm
whatever.
ready.
Okay. So Daniel's take on AI in accounting: friend, foe, or fad?
Um, Fred, if you treat him well,
Okay. Will offshore talent ever be
it's
seen
very.
as a?
I just
Okay. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's very difficult for me, as you can tell how quickly and how long I spoke there. I'm doing my best to stay to one
Yeah.
sentence, so I'm
Yeah.
prepared. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Will offshore talent ever be seen as a core team members?
I think for some firms already
Hmm.
is, but
Hmm.
yes, eventually most firms will see it that way. It may take
Hmm.
a while.
What's one skill every firm owner should be developing now?
Right now, the ability to craft a good AI prompt.
Okay, that's good one. What's one big myth about the future of accounting?
AI is going to take everyone's jobs. It
Yeah,
will not.
that's good. So, okay, so we are at the end of the rapid fire, and before we end this session, one last piece of advice that you would love to give to the viewers who are watching. These are the accounting firm owners.
I would say take charge. It's annoying to have to make a lot of decisions and have to choose your path forward, but you've never had more options and more ability to determine the shape of your firm or the shape of your career. If you're willing to step up and say, you know what, this is what I want, this is what I don't
Hmm.
want. I'm not just going to do
Hmm.
what the firm I started working for when I got out of college does. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to build the career and the firm that I
Hmm.
like.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dan, for this valuable time that you've spent with on this podcast of Smart Outsourcing Talk. So, I think we talk everything right from talent to tech to transformation, future, AI, and pretty much everything about the profession. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
thanks. See you again in the next conference, maybe.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. All right, Devkanya.